Hello, I'm Brent Stafford, and this is Aftermath of Murder Survivor Stories, a multi-part video series produced in support of the National Victims of Crime Week. Aftermath of Murder goes behind the headlines as survivors share their stories about the loss, grief, trauma, and the hope for healing in the aftermath of murder. Joining us today is Carol de Delley. Her son Timothy McLean was viciously killed on a Greyhound bus in 2008 when he was suddenly stabbed and then beheaded by a deranged passenger in front of 30 people on board. Carol, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Well, tell us what happened to Timothy.
Timothy was working with the fair, which travels to major cities all across Canada. And he had just finished working in Edmonton and was on his way home. He had been on the bus already for over 20 hours. He was catching a nap. He had earbuds in so as not to disturb anybody with his music, and was sleeping. A passenger sat down beside him and, with no forewarning and completely unprovoked, attacked him, started to stab him. The first two wounds were very severe to the neck and upper chest, but in those first two blows, the adrenaline kicked in and Timothy jumped up out of his seat, placed himself over the killer, and ended up in the aisleway, where the killer focused his attention on my son and proceeded to continue to stab him well over 100 times, decapitated him, cut off everything that could be cut off of him, consumed his eyes, and a third of his heart muscle.
Cannibalism.
Cannibalism. That would be the reason that it was worldwide, international headlines. The gruesomeness of it all was horrific, to say the least. We had heard all day long about this event having happened, and then I heard that it was so close to where I lived. And then 24 hours later, we were told that it was my child.
It took that long to be told?
It took that long for us to be notified. I'm told that part of the reason for that is the police wanted to be sure that they had the correct identity of the individual before they notified any family. Timothy's body was so severely and horribly desecrated that they could not identify him by his very identifiable tattoos.
It took a lot of time to make a lot of things happen in this case, including there was a period of time there where the RCMP just stood by and watched what was happening?
There were police officers on the scene from about 10 minutes into the attack, and the preceding standoff took about 4 hours and 48 minutes that the RCMP took to assemble their task force, show up on the scene, and then stood by and did nothing for 4 hours and 48 minutes while this man ravaged my son's body and cannibalized my child.
That's shocking.
Eventually, at about 1:30 in the morning, Vince Lee threw himself out of a bus window in order to be apprehended. And when he was apprehended, he was found to have my son's ear, nose, and tongue in a baggie in his pocket. The internal organs of my child were in 4 to 6 different locations on the bus in bags.
This is no regular murder.
This is far from a regular murder. Far from a regular one.
When you heard, how did you feel?
Immediately sick to my stomach. When I initially heard what had happened, I felt sick, I felt nauseous. We prayed for the family of this person, and then 24 hours later found out it was my son that we had prayed for.
You can't get any grislier than this. When we talk about an aftermath of murder, that the grisly details or captivate people, they captivate the media, so often we don't get any picture of the victim. Tell us about your son, Timothy.
Timothy was for sure by far my wild child. He was a free spirit. He was incredibly bright, very intelligent, had read everything in the school library by grade 5, bored, unchallenged in school, dropped out of high school, wanted to travel with the fair to meet interesting people and see the world, or see the country anyway, and he loved doing that. He was the kind of kid that could throw himself into any group and get along with everybody. He was also the peacemaker, so if there were a couple of people that weren't getting along so well or arguing or whatever, he would smooth things over. People would wait on him. If they wanted to hang out with him and he wasn't ready, they would wait till he was ready.
So Vince Lee, who's the offender here, the killer here, but he's not a murderer.
No, because in order to get a designation of murderer, you have to go to court and be charged with murder and convicted of murder. He was not. He was not convicted of anything. He was removed from the justice system and placed into the healthcare system, and we are, as a country, going to do everything in our power to meet every of his needs, to do what is best for Vince Lee.
So let's talk about that, because just recently, within the last 2 weeks, there was some major news that has come out. He's getting out?
He is already out. He hasn't had a complete discharge, but he is out in the community unsupervised, off grounds. They are moving him from a locked forensic ward at the mental facility that is housing him to an unlocked ward.
What guarantee is there?
There is no guarantee. The word guarantee frustrates me and irritates me, because there is no guarantee. And that's actually, from the trial, it's one of the words that the psychologist or psychiatrist used as well. They cannot guarantee the future behavior of any individual. That's sort of how they absolve themselves of any responsibility either, because we already know Vince Lee's not responsible. The court determined that already. So the court determined that Vince Lee is not responsible, but neither is the psychiatric community that allowed him to walk away from treatment that resulted in this. They're not responsible either. And yet my son is no less dead. The politicians can banter that around back and forth all they want. They can point the fingers at each other, the federal, the provincial governments, who's responsible for what part. Well, the truth is none of them are held responsible at any point or avenue throughout this, and that's wrong.
That's disgusting.
Yes. Well, if you feel that way and other Canadians feel that way, then you can multiply that by about 1 million and you might get close to what I feel like. I'm so frustrated with trying to raise awareness to the issue, that people are so unaware of how these cases are handled. They truly believe that these people go into a place where they're never coming out again. They're never going to rejoin our society. I will tell you right now, the system is hell-bent and focused on rehabilitating and reintegrating that individual back into our society. What you need to understand is this man suffers from paranoid schizophrenia. It is incurable and it is a lifelong illness. It is medication dependent. In Canada, we have no legal mechanism that would require him to continue treatment after release with no criminal record. He'll have the freedom to cross borders. And when he does cross borders, any border, provincial or into the States, wherever he wants to go, when he does cross a border, his mental health diagnosis will not follow him.
So literally, he's gotten away with this.
Well, yeah.
So how have you handled your grieving process during the time?
I'll let you know when I start it. I haven't had opportunity really to do that. Timothy died in 2008, and since that time, we've attended the trial and 6 review board hearings already. And I'd like to clarify what a review board is. A review board is simply a board that sits to review the offender's mental status. That is it. The crime itself is not discussed. We're not allowed to talk about the index offense, which is how they refer to the slaughter of my child.
Index offense? Index
offense, so as not to offend the offender in his treatment. I have an opportunity to submit an impact statement, a victim's impact statement, and they have the opportunity, they being the defense attorneys and the Crown, whoever, has the opportunity then censor it so that we don't upset the treatment of the afflicted individual.
There's been a lot of things that you've had to deal with that are not normal, but murder is not normal for anybody.
No.
There are people out there in organizations that can help. Have you received help, and how helpful was the help?
Yes, I did. I sought some help out. When this first happened, we were given a list of organizations and groups that we could contact and mental health care professionals that we could access. And bear in mind, you know going in that you're only going to have maybe 4 to 6 visits with this person. I chose to go with a spiritual counselor through my Aboriginal elder, which I found extremely helpful and was what I needed. She has remained open to that 24 hours, 7 days a week, whether she's being paid or not, which I certainly wouldn't get from the more traditional psychiatric help. I joined several different victims groups and organizations, MOVA being one, Manitoba's Organization for Victims Assistance. I sat on their board for a while. I found, though, that with my advocacy work for Not Criminally Responsible, trying to raise awareness to the issue, I just didn't have the time or energy to put my focus with another group. So yeah, my advocacy work is kind of what's been keeping me getting out of bed every day.
It sounds like a life mission for you.
It is absolutely a life mission. If I can prevent one other family from having to go through what myself and my family have experienced, then it will be a well-fought fight and a worthy one.
If you or someone you know has experienced a loss through homicide, go to the Manitoba Organization for Victim Assistance website at mova.ca to find available resources and information on homicide support. If you are interested in volunteering or to make a donation, please visit the website or call the numbers below. This has been Aftermath of Murder Survivor Stories.